It's easy to say that you're unashamed of the gospel if your life doesn't look any different than the unbelievers that you know. I had a conversation with Nikki Phillippi, and we talked about what it actually means to be unashamed of the gospel when you seek to make every area of your life radically transformed by submitting to the lordship of Jesus Christ. And that's what we're going to talk about in this special pre-record edition of the LCI Greenroom. Hey, everybody. So this will be a bit of a weird one. I do these once in a while where this is a pre-recorded version of the LCI Greenroom, but still going to be live streamed in a sense using our streaming software. But before we get into the conversation with Nikki, which I'm super excited to share with you, was one of my favorite conversations I've had on this show or any of my shows, I wanted to do a quick ad for the people who have edited my podcast and most of the shows at the Libertarian Christian Institute with our Christians for Liberty network, and that's Podsworth Media. Podsworth does the editing for most of our shows, except for this one, the Greenroom, typically. Although that's going to change a little bit going forward, at least for the audio listeners. Although you video listeners will get a special treat here. Usually, because it's live, we just leave it up on YouTube the way it is. But if you listen to the Greenroom audio feed, you would get a little bit of audio editing done by me. But now with Podsworth's new app, we're going to be able to give you the same audio or near the same audio quality that you get in all the other shows we do with the LCI Greenroom. And you'll get to hear that not just with this conversation, but I'm going to give you a preview because what worked out was actually Nikki's microphone had issues early on. And so even though the audio quality of the raw recording wasn't perhaps what we would have wanted, just running it through the Podsworth app produced a sound quality that you wouldn't even know that Nikki's mic wasn't quite working the way that we wanted to. I'm going to play for you, which is going to look a little trippy here for you video listeners, but I'm going to play for you a little bit from that conversation that we had of the raw footage and then play you the edited one so you'll be able to see the difference.
My dad, though, was an atheist for a large chunk of his life, and he had like this crazy come to Jesus story that is actually up on my channel if anyone.
So as you can hear there, that's a little bit echoey. The microphone wasn't set up right, so it wasn't picking up her voice correctly. It's a lot of reverb. You can hear her, but it's not exactly, the kind of like podcast quality that we want to give people that makes it kind of like, easy on the ears, right? You don't want anything that's kind of distracting or a little bit like, maybe hurts the ears a little bit with the harshness or the sound quality. So now I'm going to share with you the finished version, which already has been edited to have the sound quality improved, and you'll be able to notice the difference right away.
We're both believers by the time I arrived on the scene. My dad, though, was an atheist for a large chunk of his life, and he had like this crazy come to Jesus.
So as you can see there, much improved audio. It sounds like the mic is actually, up to her mouth, like professional mic quality, much different than what we started with. So that is what you're able to do with the Podsworth app. And this isn't just for podcasters. If you have sermons, if you have audiobooks, you have anything where you had to record spoken audio and it just didn't come through the way you want to, there's background noise, there's like plosives and pops or anything, it's definitely worth running it through the Podsworth app to see if it'll clean it up for you. And you don't need a subscription or anything like that. You just go to the link, which will be in the description for this episode, and you upload your audio, whether it's your computer or your phone. You customize the settings however you want them to be, although I just recommend the default settings. That's what we did for this one. And it will filter all that out, and you'll get a much more professional sounding video or audio file emailed to whatever email address you use. And if you use the code LCI50 at checkout, you will get 50% off your first order with them. So definitely check out Podsworth, and you support this show as well as all the other shows here at the Libertarian Christian Institute. So with that out of the way, I want to now give you this edited, but still, somewhat spontaneous and true to the spirit of the Greenroom. I mean, it's never completely unscripted, like we say in the slogan. But the idea is that it's a natural conversation, right? And I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with Nikki and hope to have more with her in the future. And so I'll shut up now and switch over to that. In Romans 1, Paul says, "I am not ashamed of the gospel." That verse is easy to affirm on paper for us as Christians, I think, but the real weight of it comes when we face the cost. Just recently, with the tragic death of Charlie Kirk, we're reminded that being unashamed of the gospel doesn't only mean being willing to lose friends or opportunities or seeking after cultural approval. In some cases, it can mean staring down life or death consequences for standing firm in Christ. The full line from Romans 1:16 reads, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes." And amen to that. First and foremost, the gospel is the living hope we have in Jesus Christ, in what his death and resurrection accomplished for us personally and the world. Yet the gospel isn't only a message about our personal salvation. It carries implications for every part of our lives. As our culture grows less Christian, living unashamed doesn't just mean putting a Bible verse in your Instagram bio. It means standing on God's truth, meaning not only proclaiming Jesus Christ as Lord, but living out the ripple effects of that confession in how we handle economics or how we raise and educate our children, in what we put into our bodies, and even how we vote. To say Christ is king is to say Caesar is not, and that challenges every rival authority, every false kingdom, and every cultural idol. That is why I'm glad to welcome Nikki Phillippi to the show tonight. Here's a brief bio for her, if you're unfamiliar. Nikki first rose to prominence on YouTube during the early 2010s, creating lifestyle, wellness, and faith-centered content, and she gained a dedicated audience with her relatable videos, as well as her music covers of worship songs and other music as well. Over time, her platform expanded to include marriage and motherhood and homeschooling, and then more recently dipping into the waters of politics and current events, with her Christian faith remaining central to her work. Alongside her creative pursuits, she has also faced seasons of public controversy, which have only deepened her conviction to live unashamed of the gospel. Nikki's journey has meant living unashamed of the gospel, not just in theory, but in practice. Again, walking through seasons where her convictions about family, faith, and freedom came at real cost. And she's experienced what it means to stand firm when it isn't easy. And I think her story and the conversation we're going to have today can encourage us all to be actively counting the cost and consider daily what it means to be following Christ without shame, fear, or compromise. With that, I'll bring Nikki up here. Nikki, thanks for joining me today. I'm glad that we were able to set this up.
I was just going to say, what an intro. First off, like, you have a great way with words. And yeah, no kidding about everything that just unfolded with Charlie this week. It was definitely a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people. Just seeing that just so explicitly was just wild, to say the least. But no, I'm really excited to be here. I was telling Jacob before we got on the call that I have a friend a couple months ago, right around the time that Jacob reached out, and she was like, "I feel like you're kind of going in the direction more of like political commentary, social commentary type stuff." And I got kind of weird about it. I was like, "Oh no, what are you talking about? I'm like lifestyle. I do lifestyle stuff." And she was like, "Really? Because I really do think that's the direction you're going." So I'm excited to be talking to you, because watching some of your videos and your interviews, you just have a really, just like the intro, great way with words. And I don't really have anything to add on to that. You summarized all of it so well. I'm excited to be here. I will say this. I am a fake, how do we word this? Like political fan. Like growing up, I was the only fourth grader in my class. I remember like going to school being like, "Were you guys watching the presidential election last night?" And like none of my friends were. I was like, "Oh, this is weird for me at the end of this." And like back in the day when I lived in Los Angeles and I was doing different shows, I worked for like theme parks and I did live theater and films and commercials and stuff. And I would be driving to work. I was always listening to KFI AM 640 talk radio. It was conservative leaning radio, Rush Limbaugh, John and Ken, people like that. But I'm a fake political person. I'm really not that informed, yet I still manage to have some like firm opinions. And then other areas where I have questions. I'm honestly pretty new to libertarianism. If I don't even know that I necessarily fully fall into that. So I'm excited for this to be a back and forth and just chat. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to dive into that as well. I am curious to hear more a little bit about your upbringing. You started to unpack it a little bit there. So were you raised like in a more conservative home, and like what kind of theological influences you sort of like led you? What was your like coming to faith journey like? I feel like that's something I don't know if I haven't heard you talk about it. I don't know if my wife has either. She follows you more closely than I do. But like I said, like I said in the intro though, and I told you this in our back and forth, I still have a lot of your music. That's what I primarily got into of your content. You did amazing covers of Hillsong, of Switchfoot, other music as well. And I still have that in my Spotify shuffle. So it's a little.
Well, thank you.
It's a little. There's a little bit of like okay, I've listened to you like sing songs before, and now I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit.
Yeah,
it's a little cool, but
starstruck. I get that with everyone that I watch on the internet, and I'm like, wow, you're a real person. It's crazy.
Right.
Yeah. Side note. That's not a side note addressing that. I am so proud of all of that music I got to do. The crew, the people that I got to work with on all of those songs were so mind-blowingly talented. Not to kind of like slam myself again, but I kind of mean it. It's like they made me seem a lot better and cooler than maybe I actually am, because they are so like seriously mind-blowingly talented. I'm really grateful for that period of time. And I guess also kind of a side note off that, I hope to, and I may do more music in the future, because it is a built-in passion, like into me. That is a big part of my background, music in general, really dancing, but I've had a lot of injuries over the years, and it kind of segued into more just music. So I hope to get back into that whole world again at some point, but right now is not the season. As with 5 children, raising children, that is a full-time, all-consuming thing for me at this point in time. So my background, I was raised in a Christian home. My parents were both believers by the time I arrived on the scene. My dad, though, was an atheist for a large chunk of his life, and he had this crazy come to Jesus story that is actually up on my channel. If anyone is interested in hearing my dad's conversion story, I guess that's what you call it, like what that process looked like for him, you can just look up my name and probably like dad, atheist, something like that. You'll find it. And my dad's incredible. He's got an incredible story, but they were both believers by the time that I was born. And I would say by LA standards, we were very conservative. I've always been conservative. My husband and I got married at 20. So we're going on 18 years of marriage. So we got married very young. We've always been very conservative leaning. I'd say over the last 7 years, my mind has been expanded more into just the spectrum of politics. And I realized, we weren't really that conservative. Like we were conservative. Right. We've always been pro-life, maybe conservative financially, conservative in terms of what we believe, like how we believe God ordained a family to look like, what we believe marriage is supposed to look like. Things like, honestly, I joke that my biggest like leftist lie that I fell for, if we want to call it that, whatever, is we believed in the concept of overpopulation. We believed in the concept of like limited resources. And I wouldn't call this like a leftist lie, but just while we're on the topic, we also believed that there were just like, how do you word this? Like tons of orphans that just needed adopting. That's a whole separate thing, almost along the lines of human trafficking, whether we end up going in that conversation, whatever. But over the years, I mean, and really along with that, it was this belief of like, what's so special about my DNA? Like, why do I have to procreate? Who cares? Right. Oh my gosh, there's a fly you might see literally fly across the screen. Flies are popping off in Idaho right now. But that's what I believe the biggest thing that we fell for, that I think almost falls in that like anti-natalist, nihilistic worldview of like, what's such a big deal about my DNA? Once again, side note, that's not a side note. When my son popped out of me, like one of the first things I said was like, how could you not believe in God? And it was honestly the moment I was like, this is why I just got chills. Why whoever they is, evil people, I don't know, non-believers, why they don't want us to have babies. Because once you look into that soul, I'm getting chills again. I can almost cry. That didn't even exist. And then they come out and they look at you and you recognize instantly, this is a unique soul. It was so world altering. And that whole view that I had of life just crumbled. Like, oh, that's what's so special. It's not just my DNA, though. Yes, someone else kept my bloodline going till I got here at this point. But yeah, wow, I tend to go all over the map. Clearly, so yeah,
that's good. I'm curious how much your Christian beliefs may have either created friction or guided you during that time. I know, like for me, for various reasons, even though I was also raised in a pretty conservative evangelical upbringing, by the time I was probably like 20, getting married and settling down, I had moved pretty far left, maybe center left. It's kind of hard to say. I was kind of more of a social democrat, like Bernie Sanders type, and I was also a vegan, and yet I was always pro-life. And as I started having kids and I was in all these left-leaning liberal vegan groups that we'd meet up and eat together and socialize, I started to notice not just the subtle anti-human, anti-natalist vibes, but sometimes just very honestly overt ones. Like there are literally people on the left who are not just, hey, we live in a world that's overpopulated and we should have less kids. There are some who are just like literally, we think the human species should die out because we worship Mother Nature, we worship the planet, and humans are and they're like, listen, we're not saying we want to kill everyone. We just want people to stop reproducing and just slowly die out over several generations. And they like say that to me with a straight face. And even though, and so like, I'm wondering if you had moments like this, because like this moment for me, when this person told me that, even though I still was very left-leaning politically, my faith and like the Holy Spirit in me was like, awakening me like, oh wow, there's something especially like wrong and pernicious at play here. It's not just like because some political disagreements can be like, okay, we're disagreeing over tax rates or disagreeing over things that have consequences but aren't quite as existential as we think the human race should die out completely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's wild. It is interesting because it's like they have this idea, and I can kind of see what they're saying, but I completely disagree with them, that by you bringing them into the world, that they didn't consent to that. So it's wrong. And that's just so mind blowing to me. But yeah, I was vegan for a short period of time. I was vegetarian for like 7 years, something like that. My friends joke that I'm like a recovering vegetarian because I kind of still am a little bit, but I'm not one of those, like I eat a lot more protein now, but I'm like, I really love fruits and vegetables. Okay, people, you can't shake that from me. We were put in the garden. I love it. I don't even know where I was going. I mean, I guess backing up to what you said, yeah, I was raised in a Christian home. I went to a private Christian school from kindergarten through 6th grade. Hated it. That was a very interesting journey for me because it kind of always felt this way, like in Christian circles, like I don't know. I wasn't holy enough. That's not the right phrasing. But then it seemed like in the artsy world, like I was too Christian, too holy. Like I don't know the wording for it. It was kind of an odd fit. I don't even really know where I'm going with this, to be honest. I'm kind of drifting off into that's, yeah. Where do you want me to go from there? I feel like
well, that's fine. I just didn't know, like, if you had any, I guess and I get what you mean. Like, I felt like when I was in Christian circles that because I was raised in maybe like the worst types of evangelical circles where it was legalistic, very kind of like the height of like purity culture and things like that in the 90s and 2000s. And so I always felt like I'm a Christian, I believe in Jesus, but man, we're so judgmental and we don't love people enough. And like, I don't want to be like that. It was like the slogan, like, I don't want a religion. I want a relationship with Jesus. Right. And so I felt like I was very not dogmatic and not overly religious in like the negative connotation of the word. But when I was similar to what you said, if I was with my liberal, left-leaning, secular friends, it's just like any little bit of your Christianity that comes out, they're like, oh, you're being very preachy right now. Stop.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, when my husband and I got married, at that point, I always had my Christian group, like my church group, my Bible study, but a lot of my life was spent in the arts, dance classes, at shows, at acting classes, theater things. And when I got engaged, I can't even tell you how many people in the RC circles tried to talk me out of it. They said, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. One of them, this is random, I was working for a magician who was like an older guy. And right before we went on stage, like 15 minutes before, he gave me a whole big speech how I was making the biggest mistake of my life because he had been divorced. And I would come to regret it, and religion had brainwashed me and all this stuff. It was really awkward to go on stage and do the show after that. But yeah, just I would say I've always been fairly conservative, but I've become more conservative as I've gotten older. And definitely everything from 2020 and then our cancellation that we went through definitely radicalized me even more. I'm much more farther right than I even was before. But yeah, always pretty conservative is the point. Hated private Christian school though. Homeschooling like saved my life, kind of literally. Honestly.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll get into that. So how did your early rise start, and how much when you were building your platform over time did your Christian convictions shape into like what you were trying to do, or like was there a plan, or did it just kind of like happen and you were making it, which is fine if you're making it up as you went along.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I started out too.
Yeah. I think sometimes you have to just start, right? You just got to go. When I started, it's interesting because I had this motto on YouTube the whole time that kind of became completely shattered in some ways when we went through our cancellation. You forgive me, although whatever. I may bring it up quite a bit, but it was such a pivotal turning point in my presence online. It may come up a few times. I know we're planning on potentially talking about it. But when I started, I would tell people like, I want to be like, this sounds so corny, but I want to be like a vitamin wrapped in chocolate. Like I want to be like, it's appealing and sweet, but like there's substance to it. And I want the substance to be that I'm not ashamed of the gospel, that I am not ashamed of sharing my faith and my convictions. And so that's actually something really interesting about, as people have been really mad at me over the years for my beliefs, for my stance. Like, oh, I used to like you, but then you became more radical. And I'm like, well, you're not totally wrong that I became more radical, but you're kind of wrong, because if you go back to the very, very beginning of all of my stuff, I had a channel called Ask Nikki. I uploaded hundreds of videos on that channel. And this was, I started that channel within the first few months of starting YouTube. And the whole point, it's kind of ridiculous, but whatever. Anyone can give advice, but it was essentially an advice channel. And girls would ask me like questions about relationships and friendship, whatever. And I would just kind of unabashedly share my perspective, which is inherently like a Christian, from my faith, a faithful perspective. So I've been talking about a lot of this stuff from the very beginning. It just, and people said this when I got canceled, and they were like, she's so hateful, this and that. They were like, she somehow managed to just like stay in her little corner of the internet this whole time, but now we know who she is. That's the most dead on take, is I just for some reason managed to like stay in my little corner of the internet and do my thing. And everybody knew I was a Christian. Even the circles I ran it, they knew I was a Christian. But for some reason, I was just able to kind of do my thing, and I didn't really run into any problems, which partially, there were a lot of reasons why cancellation was painful. That was part of it, was there were a lot of people that I didn't think we had any problems. Like we were fine. We were friends. And when it happened, it was almost like they were waiting for something like, oh, finally, now I can jump on her and I can talk about how much I hate her worldview or faith or whatever. And it was really surprising because, I had just kind of been in the space doing my thing I always had hate. But the cancellation hate was like, one was like, oh, there's a forum on Reddit. And then the other one was like, oh, I'm on the cover of Fox News. Like it was totally different. So yeah, but from the beginning is the point. That was always a goal, was to be able to infuse the most important part of my life, my faith.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. As you started to do, as we talked about the musical stuff as well, being added into this, was part of it, you used this analogy, a vitamin wrapped in chocolate.
That sounds so corny.
It's fine. How much of that, like, did you, because I remember some of your music videos used to have these calls to action at the beginning and the end, where then you would raise awareness to things like human trafficking and other sort of like issues going on in the world or in the culture. So like, was that part of that at the beginning as well? Or did you just start stumbling upon certain causes that you felt inspired to be like, hey, I have a platform, I can sort of use this towards meaningful causes?
Yeah, pretty early on. Get out of here, flies. So before I ever actually started YouTube, there is an organization from my hometown called Zoe International. And it's an organization that works to basically fight child trafficking. And they have a home in Thailand. They also now have a home in Los Angeles as well. And the people that run the organization are just incredible people, Christ followers. their heart is for rehabilitation, and really they're just very reputable, ethical, loving people. And so pretty early on, my husband and I got involved with them with just like financially being able to support how we could. Then we started I did a video with them early on. And from there, it kind of spread out to, there's also a place in Los Angeles called the Dream Center. They're very well known, like all over the world. I think they have Dream Center locations, but they really are a big part of the city of Los Angeles, like taking care of families, helping to keep families together. They had a human trafficking floor. They've kind of adapted over the years to care for different needs of the city. But yeah, from the beginning, that was something that I knew I wanted to be involved in. My dad actually randomly, he went to Thailand with Zoe Children's Homes like over a decade ago. So he had actually seen the homes. He had gone and met a lot of people that worked there and the children. And I just felt like, I don't know, I've had this feeling for a long time, especially once I got on YouTube. And I don't fully mean this, but I kind of mean this. It felt like there was almost no point in doing music if it wasn't to honor the Lord, to bring people's minds and hearts towards God. And like I said, I don't fully mean that. Like, I like a good, like if I'm going to a wedding and there's a dance floor, like I like a good dance floor. But that's kind of how I felt from the beginning. And so I was, blessed enough to be able to do things with Zoe Children's Homes, with the Dream Center. Those are, unless I'm forgetting, those are the two primary places that I worked with.
Yeah, I didn't.
So
because it was so long ago, I remember listening to those videos, but I didn't realize that it was with Zoe, because my church also has partnered with Zoe, because our assistant pastor who recently moved away, but for years he used to be part of they did like competitive cycling events.
Oh, wow.
Awareness for the organization and whatnot.
That's
like,
cool.
People would pledge certain amounts for like how many miles and stuff.
That's cool.
So no, it's a very good organization and a very good, I mean, it's one of those things that like we forget, and we'll get into this more later on, but like we live in this like culture where sometimes I think the way we're raised in schools is to sort of think that like the past was like ugly and all these bad things happened, but then America was born and the American government sort of like defeated all the evil people and all the evil ideas. And now it's like we live in this good sort of like peachy keen, like sort of like clouds and rainbows in the sky world. Or if there's like bad things, it's like random acts of, but like we don't realize that there's still, not just human trafficking. There's like countries where there's still like in institutionalized slavery, and
unbelievable.
Also, like there's still a lot of, and a lot of it is, it's not disconnected to even our own government and certain corporations and
that's my belief.
Yeah. I mean, I think certainly, like, I don't want to get too conspiratorial here too quickly, but I think when the Epstein stuff got released, it kind of like got a lot of more people who weren't necessarily very politically inclined to at least consider like, okay, maybe there's more of this stuff that goes on around me than I'd realized before.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with my mother-in-law when she was in town about that. And I said to her, I'm like, dude, I can't help it that my own life experiences, like everyone's life experiences shape obviously how they're interpreting things. But I am so conspiracy theorist minded. And I don't state them with like those opinions with fact, because I have no clue, but I can't help but believe what I believe about some of these things just because of what I've seen in the entertainment industry. I have family members that are in the entertainment industry, and that doesn't really mean a whole lot because it's just entertainment. But it kind of does, in the sense of like, when you see people who are willing to act one way and say one thing on camera and then turn around and it's completely different, you're like, whoa, people will do that? Like, what? And in Los Angeles, it's not like I was just in entertainment in like, I don't know, some small town. It's like, I've seen some things that just have made me more conspiratorial minded at this point.
Right. Yeah, I think it's good to be willing to ask questions. And then like, as long as you're admitting that I don't know, but like some people will think that just asking certain questions is sort of like you're automatically going down some weird, dark, dangerous path. But I just kind of feel like as Christians, if like we believe what the Bible tells us, which is we don't struggle against flesh and blood, but against spiritualities and the forces of darkness and heavenly places. It even says it against rulers and principalities. And like, we should at least be willing to entertain possibilities that
Yes.
sometimes it's these sorts of conspiracies at least could be plausible, even if you need to wait for more evidence to validate them, I think.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because I don't actually believe that our votes matter. Like, I think that things are pre-planned, but I still show up to vote because I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And I'm totally aware of that. I'm like, dude, my vote could totally matter. So I'm not gonna throw it away because I have the same thing that has been taught to me. It's been taught to everyone that, like, people have fought for us to have that ability. So I'm going to do it. But it's like, if I'm being real, I don't even think our votes matter. So anyways, on that note.
That's a very libertarian idea, Nikki.
Well, is it? You're going to educate me on these things as we go.
but before we get into that, I do want to, you've brought it up a few times now. I want to dive into at least one of these controversies and cancellations you've gone through. I feel like my audience is going to like roll their eyes at a lot of them if we brought them up. I know you guys put down your dog because of, and he was a bull terrier.
Bull terrier.
Yeah.
And like the target dog.
Right. But like it was a matter of safety and concern about your children, which again, this gets to the whole antinatalist thing. And like, I don't think you're not going out there like, I hate dogs and I want everyone to kill their
Not
animals.
at all.
But it's just like, if you have a dog that's displaying signs of aggression and you have kids, you have a limited set of choices in front of you. Same thing with like, which we'll get more into this, your stances during the COVID era. Like no one in my audience is going to be concerned about that. I do think there's been a lot of like false allegations put your way about what happened with the whole adoption saga of your ongoing cancellation that happened. It was a source of major backlash. And from what I can tell, and like this is the part where my wife gave me like the long, all right, let me sit down. We're going to watch some videos and we're going to, go see like what happened here. But from my understanding is that, and this actually has like a libertarian and like Christian, like parental tie-in, which was that your concerns, it wasn't that you were like, screw kids who need adopted, like whatever.
No,
it was that there was a very real concern about the situation you guys were looking into with adopting a child. It was Thailand, correct?
At that point, the controversy that spun out was in regards to Thailand. Yeah. Maybe it was South Korea, because we started with international adoption, looking into that. And anyways, go on.
But the issue, from my understanding, was that you wouldn't be able to even like formally adopt the child for over a year.
Yes, that's
once they got here, and that there were all these stipulations, and you have a very online presence, which is sort of like your career, and I would even say like a type of ministry. And so you guys were like, kind of like, well, how do we do this in a way where like if you adopt a child, it's like you want that to be your child. Like you don't want to have a child for a year and then have some government come and be like, nope, never mind, taking them back. Yeah. I mean, that's traumatic for everyone involved and could cause ripple effects for other people who are trying to go through that process.
Yeah, so this is probably, and I'm flashing back, it was Thailand, because that specifically ties into our relationship with Zoe International, because that is where their first home was. It was 6 years ago. So sometimes I have to like time travel and be like, okay, what were all the details? We documented a lot, which was part of my mistake, I think, looking back, was when we went into everything, my thought process was, I want people to see what this looks like so that we can kind of demystify the adoption process. And we started with looking at international adoption for a few reasons, partially because my brother is actually adopted from China. And so we started off by looking at China. And once we kind of went down that path, we were basically told that, honestly, thank God that the Chinese adoption policies have changed. Not only has China expanded the amount of children that they let people have now, it's like 2-ish. So back in the day, it used to be 1. Now they're much more flexible about it, I think, for a lot of reasons that we don't need to go off onto. It doesn't matter. It's great that they've expanded that. And we were basically told, I mean, I'm trying to think about how much details to like leave it and keep out. But basically they were like, hey, if you're not willing and able to accept a highly special needs child, you're going to want to look at another country. It's probably not a great program for you. And one thing that I don't think, it's a weird topic, because ultimately if you have a biological child, you get what you get. And in my worldview, you're keeping them, you're loving them. That's what it is. But it is weird. At the same time, we have been mentored and informed over and over and over, do not go into something without your eyes wide open. And so that was part of it. We're like, all right, I don't know that we're prepared to take on, extensive special needs. And so we ended up looking at other countries, and one of them was Thailand. And well, this is where the main bulk of the controversy pops off. When you enter a program internationally, every program has different stipulations. None of them are the same. And the first thing you do when you're entering a program is you go through, they send you a list. This is what it looks like if you're going to enter a program. So we had not entered the Thailand program, but we were looking at it and we're going through the list. So actually fast forward, she still works with me. She's the only person that I still work with. She's my assistant. We've been working together for like, oh my gosh, almost a decade now, which is hard to even wrap my head around. But she is a great assistant for me because if I come across a little flighty, it's because I am. And she is very type A, very like on it. And I involve her in a lot of, honestly, kind of in everything I do. I keep her up to date on things because she always offers just a perspective that wouldn't occur to me because of my personality and wouldn't occur to Dan because he's a dude and a different personality. She's like the third part of the equation that's just a great addition. And when we told her like, hey, we're looking at entering the Thailand program, one of the things on the sheet was that the child cannot appear online anywhere for a year or the government reserves the right to take the child back. Okay, don't skip ahead, Nikki. Let's stay focused. So that was on the sheet. And when my assistant got this, she ended up talking to me and she's like, I don't think this is a good fit for you. And I'm like, it's just a year. It's just a year. Yeah, we vlog and stuff. It would be nice to be able to share that, but it's just a year. We could also like share footage after a year that we've filmed. And she was the one that was like, what are you talking about? Especially at that point in time, like I said, it's about 6-7 years ago, I would go places like to a restaurant or even just if it's not like a fan situation, like a birthday party at a friend's house, are you really going to be able to keep every single picture on lockdown? It's not like, oh, it happens all the time, but it's happened more times than I can even count where I've gotten home and someone has taken a picture of me and tagged me, whether it's on X or Instagram or whatever. And you're like, I saw you at this restaurant, but I was too afraid to say hi. And it's like a picture from another table of me like sitting there eating. And she's like, you can't risk that. That would be horrifying beyond, couldn't even wrap my head around it. If because of what I do for a living, because people know who I am, a child gets a picture taken and then suddenly they're ripped out of our home. Like it just didn't make sense. And once she laid that out to us, I was like, whoa, yeah, that makes sense that this is not the appropriate fit for us. Right. So I haven't looked back at the video because I don't spend a ton of time going back and analyzing my past. But my guesstimate is that I probably didn't convey this all the best because the overwhelming belief across the board. Now, granted, it's like an hour video and I've realized people are not always so generous. If they don't like you, they will rip stuff out of context. But there has to be an element there of like, I probably didn't explain myself the best because the overwhelming sentiment was she couldn't exploit her child on the internet. So she turned down or even sent back. Like people really, like they thought we had been matched with a child.
Large degrees, yeah.
Yeah, like we had gone through the program, matched with a child, couldn't exploit them, so we sent them back. It's like, whoa, no, we were just getting the rules, hadn't even entered the program, and then for all the reasons I explained to you, it was not a fit. So that is the majority of the controversy. I could go off onto a whole other thing. There were a bunch of reasons as we went through the list of these other countries that it was like, that doesn't work. I'm trying to decide which details to leave in and out, but there were reasons why each country didn't work. And side note, that's not a side note. At this point in time, now fast forward, I'm not accusing the Thai government of this or even saying this with any like level of firmness, but Dan and I have personally come to some kind of vague conviction that there may be human trafficking going on in these international adoption circles. There is something called the Hague Convention, which is something that was like put into place, I don't even remember how long ago, that's supposed to prevent that from happening in different countries. But I don't know that I believe that it's super enforced at this point, especially considering the irony of like that we've been supporting an anti-human trafficking organization in Thailand for an extended period of time. But the farther we went down that wormhole, the more we started figuring out that a lot of the adoptions that happen in these countries, it's like buses will pull up with children in them. And it's like, oh, we have kids for you. And it's like, where these kids come from? And I don't know how much due diligence is being done depending on the country. I'm not saying that's what happened, but it started as we went down that wormhole, we started piecing things together. a lot of people were like, oh, good on the Thai government for stopping exploitative Americans from taking their children. But the more we thought about it, we're like, so what? You could exploit them after a year? Like, to me, it started to seem more like, no, I think in a year, a child is a lot less recognizable from who they were a year before. So I could keep going, but that's kind of the gist of that.
Yeah.
You sound like you want to say something.
No, that is an angle I didn't even consider, which again is one of those, like, can't exactly prove it, but there's a potentiality there for, like, there might be more nefarious things that could be motivating such a policy, right? And at the very least, like, yeah, I mean, I think I listened to that video. I would say, like, you explained it better here, but I don't think you explained it so badly in that video that it warranted the level of, like, just
outrage.
I think to some extent, like you said before, there are people who are like, they're waiting for the shoe to drop where they can be like, oh, okay, now I can, like, whether it's motivated because they hate your ideology or it's just human jealousy or some kind of, like, weird online social mob complex or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you're going to adopt someone, I mean, first of all, there's, like, the concerns about, like, you don't want to get attached to a kid and have them ripped away from you. That's devastating. Like, you don't want to cause more.
And it's devastating for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Trauma for a child who's in that process. And so it's like, I think you guys did the responsible thing to be like, think through it and be like, this could be a lot more complicated than we thought. Because even if you decided to be like, oh, I'm going to just, like, to be extra safe, get off of social media for a year. You can't control what other people do. I mean,
no, that's exactly it. That is the crux of it.
I can't even control my grandparents. I'm sorry, my parents from putting my children online sometimes. Exactly. Because we don't like our kids being online. And it's like, I'm nowhere near the level of popularity that you are. So yeah, absolutely. Even from people who are just well-meaning, who are like, oh, I saw you in public and don't know it. Yeah, I think that you guys made the right decision. And it's one of those things I'm sure you feel a little bit like you're sort of like damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you say nothing, people keep on repeating false ideas and embellishments and taken out of context. But there's something about, like, you don't want to go online and make a bunch of, like, videos trying to correct the record on your own platform necessarily.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I have friends that have been begging you to do that. Nikki, you need to do this. And I'm like, do I? I'm really conflicted. Like, there is, sorry, you were going, but I just took
I get the confliction because it can feel a little bit like there's something weird about having to go online and defend yourself from all sorts of really bad allegations. I mean, I went through this for my libertarian convictions where I had an Antifa group come after me online, dox my family, my place of employment. They even shared pictures of my house on Google Maps. And it was because they took something I said out of context, which I can't even remember anymore, but were basically trying to smear me as a Nazi, which is
that's their favorite.
Right. And I was like, well, first of all, like, I'm literally on my dad's side Jewish with, like, family members who fled Poland right before Germany invaded.
You're a Nazi.
But I'm a Nazi, right. But when that happened, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, just every time someone throws this at me, feel like I have some kind of weird obligation to, like, prove I'm not a Nazi. That's kind of like a losing, like, if someone brings it up to me, I'll correct the record. Yeah. Or be like, no, I'm not, like, there's no evidence for what these crazy people are saying. And I think there's something about, I don't know, I don't know the exact scripture quotation, but I feel like there's somewhere in the Bible where it says something about, like, in that spirit, like, never avenge yourself, kind of turn the other cheek. And, like, I think it's better as Christians sometimes, again, take every case for what it is, probably case by case basis. But I think in general, we have to be careful to not get too consumed with defending ourselves and try to, like, let our actions and kind of, like, our long-term integrity and commitment to Christ kind of, like, win the day. And if you're constantly in defensive mode and trying to, like, that can be almost a full-time job, trying to correct
100%
people's false perceptions about you, especially when you get to the level of fame.
Yeah, it's been a debate for sure over the years. There's also, I've noticed, a big part of me through the cancellations in general, which they were back to back. And the whole thing was like 4 months of my life because one just cascaded into the next. We had put Bowser down, and then all of a sudden the adoptions. I think just because people had eyes on us, then they just exploded to the next thing. But there was a big part of me, like we still have all of those videos up because, like I said, there's a big part of me that feels really stubborn. That's like, no, I said what I said. Like, even if I didn't say it right, I know that I didn't admit to something that I wasn't doing in the first place. Like, you can assign these motives to me, but I know I didn't admit to that because that's not why I was doing that. Like any of those things that they were accusing us of. And so, yeah, there's part of me that's wanted to like defend and clarify. And I still might one day. I've never turned around and really clarified the adoption thing. I can't say that I won't, I might, but there's, just a big part of me that feels exactly what you said. Like, no, I said what I said, and my actions and, God willing, my character and where he leads me in life will speak for itself, because the accusations you guys are making it's literally horrifying. Like, what, you think I'm a monster?
Well, sometimes it's
Crazy.
addition by subtraction, right? Like sometimes
What do you mean?
they are like, people will depart from whether they're your fans or they're your friends. It's like, if people are going to have that bad of a faith interpretation of you,
That.
assume the worst, then like you have to consider, and again, case by case, there might be, like, you have to express wisdom in this, but I think there's a general truth there of that sometimes when these sort of controversies happen, you find out who your real friends are, which is something I wanted to ask you about. Like, how much did that make the process worse, that you not only suffered like online social mobs and hate, but that through all of this, through the stuff with your dog, the stuff with the adoption, and then, which we didn't get to quite yet, but all the stances that you took during the COVID pandemic, that you did lose some connections with people, even the ones you told me you did the music with, people that you considered friends, sometimes brothers and sisters in Christ, who, I guess to varying degrees, turned their back on you, which I'm sure is something that, like for me, even though I just said what I said, which is sometimes people walk away for a reason, you have to accept that's like part of the process and part of God's plan. Like, I still think about people who I've lost friendships with, relationships with, family members, and it grieves me. That's the kind of stuff that can linger on your heart and mind for years, I imagine.
Yeah, it has. Over time, that corny saying, like, time heals everything. It doesn't, but it definitely softens the blow. And so I definitely felt that some people, I actually posted about this on Instagram, after we put our dog Bowser down, I had one friend who literally, like 2 days before that, we were messaging, talking about getting together, actually talking about FaceTiming because we didn't live in the same area at that time. And when that exploded, she completely unfollowed me, blocked me. Actually, whatever, we don't need to go to jail. Unfollowed me everywhere, blocked me, went off everything. And it was so shocking, not only because like, oh dang, like we were like friends. We actually used to be pretty close friends. Also because I know that person had been in a similar situation themselves. So it was very weird to be like, wait, you've done the same thing. But because people are losing it publicly, like, you've got to protect yourself, which I find that in a chunk of those people, that's what it was, that they felt like they had to protect themselves. Like you mentioned in the case with some people that I've done music with, that was actually exactly the case with some of those people where they were working, which this was crazy. And this gave me insight as to how big the story was when it happened, because they were working with people in the industry who literally said, hey, if you don't take the videos that you've done with her off of your channel and unfollow her, like get rid of your online connections with her, then you cannot move forward in this business relationship. Wow. And it was with a very, like, a large network with, I think it was like NBC or something like that. They were working on a project. And I was like, wait, they said that to you? Like, they know who I am? They know about this? And it was painful. It was shocking. I also understood. I was like, all right, well, I wouldn't do the same thing, but I see where you're coming from, I guess. It hurt, especially some of these people that, not that this even really matters. Maybe it's petty to throw this in here. I don't know. Forgive me if it's petty. Some of these people that walked away from me were people that, like, I had kind of reached a hand out to them at a different point in life to, like, pull them out. And then it was like, oh, dang, man, you've gotten some really cool experiences from this. And then when I'm in my time of need, like, you just turned away from me. And that was painful. I will say this, though. I don't know if this is, I mean, I don't know if corny is the right word. Maybe that diminishes it too much, because I don't mean to diminish it, but I also don't want to sound corny or like I'm writing something. Either way, this is how I feel right now. Since Charlie got assassinated, there is something in me that has shifted that I kind of just don't really care as much anymore. Like I felt this feeling of like, dude, losing friends, who cares? Like there are so many people out there who see things the same way as me. Maybe we're not on the exact same page, but we're on the same chapter. We're in the same book. Like, why am I at all concerned with people who want to live different? Hey, yes, we had time together. That was sad. But for a million other reasons, it doesn't need to be sad. And something flipped. I mean, just watching all of that unfold with Charlie.
Yeah.
Really flipped something in my brain.
Yeah, it does kind of put things in perspective. And I think
That's the way to put it.
I think that's part of the reason why Jesus told his apostles when they went out to like 2 by 2 to go and preach and do acts of like signs and wonders in different places. He said, if there's any place that doesn't receive you, just like shake the dust off your feet and just move on, right?
Move on. Yes.
And like, it doesn't mean like now, maybe that person or that place or whatever, maybe God will reach them with someone else.
Yes.
We can always, like, you don't have to like go like, oh, like screw them. I hate these
Totally.
people.
Yes.
Well, you can just be like, you know what? Like my time with these people is done. And I will pray for them. I hope God reveals himself to them and that they're saved and that they're transformed. But like my service to the kingdom and my journey following Christ is taking me in a different direction. And it's not always easy, but yeah, I agree. Events like what happened last Wednesday are certainly sober reminders of kind of like we have eternity with Christ, and this time we have on earth now is so limited and precious.
So I mean, I just got chills.
There's sometimes this inverted Christianity, which it might be overstating it, because I'm not saying that your eternal resting place, whether that's in heaven with God or separated from him, I'm not saying that's unimportant. But sometimes I feel like some Christians put so much focus on like Christianity as like, well, do you want to spend eternity in heaven or in hell? And forget that but once you're kind of on that side of eternity, things are set.
Yeah.
Right now, what we do now is the time in like God's story of redemption and God's story of his creation and relationship with mankind. That's the most important, because what we do now matters, but it's such a blip. So like every minute, every second, every day matters. And so that's kind of why I think you have to, like, with those people who hurt you and have wronged you, you forgive them, not to condone what they did, but to just release them to Christ and be like, that's fine. Those doors are closed. What doors are opening now in response? And I think that's the right way to navigate those sorts of things.
Yeah, you worded all of that so beautifully. And the simple phrase of like into perspective, that's exactly it. Charlie's death put a lot of stuff into perspective in regards to just the hate that I've received. I was like, whoa, this totally, like you said, puts it into perspective.
Yeah. So to zoom out a little bit here, I wanted to ask you, like, we live in this sort of new media age where like you started out and YouTube was like this sort of like, I don't know the right adjective here. It was like this fun thing, I guess. I don't think anyone who like was on YouTube in like the early 2010s would envision that one day YouTube and social media and podcasts would be like these almost like rivaling the mainstream corporate media. It's like where people get their information from, and that people who spend like their career is like, I'm online and I'm an influencer and I'm online content creator, and what kind of impact that has on culture and on politics. And there's such a thing as audience capture, right? Like the opposite of what you went through, where like you could have groveled to your audience and like been like, I'm going to serve them rather than follow my convictions. What is that beyond just that? Like, how do you navigate that in terms of like making sure your content and how you would approach sort of like that online influencer path that you're on? How do you do that while staying grounded in following what God wants from you versus like what the algorithm or what audience is expecting from you?
Well, a couple of things. First off, I do feel like God gave me not a vision for it, but an awareness and an understanding of like, oh, things are changing. Because I do feel like I'm one of a small group of YouTubers that when I started full force from the beginning. I was like, this is this is where it's at. We're going. And I remember even my mom was like, what are you doing? Can you make money at this? And I was like, I can one day. Like, just trust me. And it didn't take her that long. It was maybe like a month of me doing it. And she's like researching and she's like, oh, I don't actually think I've ever seen anything more suited for you. Like, this is great. But I feel like I saw it really early on, which is honestly a big part of why I was able to be successful, is because I saw that wave really early. And saying that, it's views and the algorithm, all of that is so relative. I don't get crazy views, but crazy views are relative, right? Like in the day of what's his name, Mr. Beast, it's like, what is crazy views? But that being said, I don't really have an answer for you beyond the fact that like every day I start my day just like praying and asking the Lord to guide me in how he wants me to use my voice, what he wants me to put out into the world. And it really is like, it's like a plea. I do this thing where like I go out in the morning, like my feet are in the grass, I like stare in the sunshine and I do like positive affirmations. But it sounds really woo-woo-wee-wah, but I actually see it. I think it is a Christian thing to think about what is lovely and right and true. And I don't say things that I think that the things that I say are actually true things, me at my best. And so I'll like say the affirmations, but then it's also mixed with like prayer. Lord, guide my feet. Show me what, like I said, what you want me. How do you want me to serve the people around me, including the people online? What you want me to do today, Lord? And it really is, in a lot of ways, especially in this season of my life, a day by day thing. Not only in regards to, the algorithm, my content is kind of maybe making a little bit of a shift right now towards being more conversational again, more current with like current cultural commentary type stuff. We'll see. But it's a day by day thing and just begging the Lord for discernment, because that's pretty much my answer. It's just begging the Lord for discernment and guidance.
Yeah, no, I like that. To memify that a little bit, what you just said is that you start every day by touching grass.
Yeah.
It's kind of important for us, for us as social. And I say that like to myself. I have to tell myself before people online do it sometimes, just to be like, go spend time with your family, go seek the Lord in prayer, because like I think it's not wrong to like know how the algorithm works and to watch your stats and to kind of like understand from like a digital marketing perspective, like what thumbnail is going to perform better and whatnot. But like
totally,
there is a point where A, I think you get diminishing results, and B, like you have to be willing to say no to those things sometimes, because there are times where I feel led to be like, and I haven't always gotten this perfect. I think early on when I started out, I was more willing to just kind of be like, I'm going to say this in the most provocative way possible. And then it'll get the most attention and likes and outrage.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of like, you know what? If I have to say it this way because it's true and it's provocative, that's fine.
Yeah.
I've learned more that like sometimes like I would rather have 90% less clicks, but with 100% more impact on the people who are clicking that's positive than just be like, oh wow, like 10,000 people watched this short and all it did was make them angry. And like, did it really, and maybe God uses that too, but I want to make sure that I'm seeking that impact, or I think this is maybe silly to say in an online context, but I don't think so, is seeking relationship over results.
Yeah, totally.
That's kind of been the mantra I've been thinking about lately, because I didn't come up with this phrase. I got this from a leadership class I did at church back over the winter into the spring. And we were going through this book called Leaders Who Last. And that was one of his mantras, was that no matter what type of ministry you're doing, it can be easy to chase results. But what's more important is to chase relationships. And that actually organically produces results over time. So it's kind of like not quite paradoxical, but it's like counterintuitive. Like you can get results without impact, or you can get results as a byproduct of just being, which I think is partly why you've been successful, is you're just very genuine. And that, I think that's going to resonate with people more over time than people who kind of like just come on the scene in a blaze and they're just like, I'm going to make everyone angry.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's interesting because I have been on so long now that I do get messages kind of regularly. And I've only recently, my sister came to town and she was like, she convinced me. My dad has been telling me for a while, you need to create like a good job folder. And I wouldn't do it for a long time because I had this kind of like warped belief where it was like, if I believe their compliments, then I'm also going to believe their criticisms, or like, I don't want to put too much weight into that. And I could kind of see where that is. But my sister and my dad pointed out to me, they're like, okay, but sometimes you are believing the criticism too much. I was like, that's true. So I started like screenshotting comments, but I've realized, I've got a lot of comments over the years of people that are like, I've been watching you for like a decade. It's like, whoa, that's really crazy. And it kind of speaks to like, I've always had this belief that like not all views are created equal. And I first came up with that thought around like when you're selling ads for content, it's like, oh, you don't get as many views. It's like a cat video could get like 1 billion views. Does that mean people are invested in it and they really care that much? And so I feel like there's something to that kind of just like aligns with what you just said, this idea of like relationship. And just because someone watches doesn't mean they're invested or you've really made an impact. But I don't know where else to go with that. But yes, I agree with you. And I appreciate, you say I'm genuine because I want to connect with people through the internet. That's what's so awesome about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and like I want to distinguish, the reason I said it's a little weird to put that in an internet context, but I think it's true, is that even though it's a different type of relationship, like the friendships I have with people online are friendships, but they're not the same type as like the friendships I have with like people in my church and my community. And then there's like people who just follow me who like leave comments. And even that's like maybe like a micro relationship. And like when you cultivate an audience, you kind of have a relationship with them. Now it can be a bad relationship. So like if you're a slave to your audience or a slave to the algorithm, that's a negative, almost controlling, manipulative, abusive relationship you're with those things. But if you're genuine and you have a positive relationship, then it's almost like there's mutual value because like you can collect like those comments over time of people sharing how like they're getting value from you in the relationship because they're like, oh wow, this is edifying me, it's building me up, it's encouraging me, it's teaching me, it's keeping me sane during the insanity of COVID lockdowns and whatnot. And then you get that back though. And then like there's a sense in which one of my friends, Dave Smith, has said this a lot in his show, that like there's a sense in which your audience does know you. And even though you don't directly talk to your audience like face to face, you kind of know them. Like over time, when you've done it long enough, it's a different type of relationship, but there is that relationship and that impact that can be very positive. I think over time.
Yeah. I think my audience has helped partially shape who I've become. Actually, in a lot of ways has shaped who I've become. And some of them have been, some of the ways I've grown or changed has been hard or bad at times, but it's been ultimately good because I've had something to learn through it. But also just like, I wouldn't have birthed my children at home if it wasn't for the internet and the relationships that I had online, because the internet is kind of what first exposed me to this concept. And then I remember when I went in for an appointment when I was pregnant with my son, and we met with the midwife at the birthing center, and I left and I vlogged this. I was like, honestly, like the appointment wasn't that great. Like she never looked at Dan the whole time. They made a comment about like, we're totally for informed consent unless you don't want to get vitamin K, then we have a problem. And it was so added to me. I was like, oh my gosh. And I vlogged afterwards. I was like, you know what, guys, if I wasn't internet famous and I was more gutsy, I would do a home birth, but I just can't do that. And I remember my audience came at me in droves and they were like, girl, do not let, they're like the fact that cause I thought, why would I can't do this because I'm internet famous, whatever, because if something happens, God forbid, I'm mourning privately and then everybody has to know about, like, it just sounds horrible. But everybody supported me so much, slid into my DMs and my comments, and they were like, no, do not let that stop you. And honestly, I mean, I just got chills again, people's encouragement and pep talks, even though that makes it sound more shallow, like they walked me through mentally something that I was like, dude, you're right. That is what I want to do. That's what I need to do. So that's just one example.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's actually a good segue to, I wanted to talk to you about, related to home birthing, is also homeschooling. And you talked about how you were raised in a private Christian school, and it was not a positive experience. And that's a more common testimony from people I know who have been raised in private Christian schools than perhaps, it's surprising to me, I guess, when I first started to realize that, like, a lot of times people who've been through it tell me or have been through, like I know people who did both public school and private Christian school, and they're like, actually, the public school was in some ways better than the private Christian school, which is counterintuitive. But
that was my husband's experience.
Yeah. There's also, not to get too political here, to be like, you have to choose the lesser of two evils, or maybe there's a third way.
Yeah.
The third way, when we're talking about education, is homeschooling. So where was that in your mind as you started a family and started having kids? Was that something like for me and my wife, we started out wanting to homeschool, but I'm curious, what was that decision like for you, and what influenced it? What were like your main reasons for deciding to do that?
Actually, my husband was one of those people, like you mentioned, that he did all three. He did public, private, and homeschooling. And his least favorite was private school, which is really interesting. And I have actually found that a lot of people that I knew who went to my private Christian school growing up, who actually did well in it, have grown up to like either be hardcore leftists that have walked away from the faith. Well, yeah, I guess that's the way to summarize it. The people that I'm thinking about specifically completely walked away from faith, which is really interesting. Or they just hated school and they didn't thrive in it, and they're actually still believers. It's really kind of an odd, finding. But yeah, so I kind of always knew that whenever we had a family, however we had a family, that I wanted to homeschool, because I mentioned to you, homeschooling like completely changed my life. I kind of couldn't believe it when I left school and I became homeschooled, just how much better my life got literally overnight, from being able to sleep and not feel exhausted every day to eating a healthy lunch. That I've always loved cooking. And I have such a vivid memory. Like it's like a movie screen in my mind of when I became homeschooled that first week, being in my kitchen at my parents' house, being like, wow, I'm cooking my lunch. And the sun was shining and I ate lunch outside, and I was instantly able to dive further into the things that I actually love, like my skill sets. And I was able to do more dancing and more singing and acting classes. And it was really amazing. I also enrolled in our local community college when I entered high school. So I was able to take college classes, which were really fun to me. It was a totally different atmosphere. I could pee whatever I needed to pee, like drink my drinks, eat a snack, whatever. It was so much more. I had so much more bodily autonomy, if that's how we would have put it, or sovereignty. I don't know. Yeah. It was just really great. So I've kind of always known. I feel like there was somewhere I was going to go with that, and I just blanked because of my own joke about having to pee, and I don't remember.
That's fine. No, I mean, there's something to like when you were starting to describe all the differences between your experience in public school versus homeschool. Like if you started to like lay them out in a certain way, you would almost be like describing being in prison versus not being in prison. Right?
That's what I liken it to. Yes.
Yeah. Like I couldn't pee when I wanted to, and like I had these horrible meals that weren't nutritionally like meeting my needs.
Yes, exactly.
Right. It's like that's probably, I haven't thought about it till just now, but there's got to be at least a part of why I think homeschool is better and why I think public school has gotten worse over time is that like how can me as an adult, I can't do my job if I'm not like fed well. And when I think about all the kids just being fed junk, and then like I wouldn't advocate for this as a libertarian, but like if you force public schools to feed children like actually like essentially like homemade meals for breakfast and lunch, you'd probably see some kind of like correlation in like rising test scores just from that alone, I imagine.
Oh, totally. All of it. I mean, I hold two beliefs, right? Like there's the extremist in me that is so against all of it. I mean, everything down to the details of like the lighting that the kids are sitting under all day, every day. I think that we are just now as like a society starting to tap into understanding what light even does to our body and our health. But they're under these lights and just like the sleep. No, you gotta get up, you gotta go. And the idea of being forced to study things that child may or may not have any interest in it. And I know a lot of people push back on me and it's like, well, you have to do things in life that you don't want to do or that you're not interested in. And I'm like, okay, first off, that's not necessarily always true. Like as an adult, the amount of times that I'm ever using the kind of math that was shoved on me is almost zero. But also, I think that's kind of how you develop unique people. Like you let them follow their unique giftings. Yeah, there is a base level of like functioning in society. But I don't know. I keep going off and then I have like 18 different thoughts and I'm not sure which direction I want to go.
No, I mean, I think so I struggle with this exact tension of how do you know? Because I think there is something to wanting to raise your kids to do hard things, uncomfortable things. And like, there is, but like, shouldn't it be things that they're actually going to use in real life? Like doing dishes, doing laundry, cleaning, life skills. I remember there literally was in my high school a class my dad made me take, which taught me nothing, but it was called life skills. And like, I remember so I think school has 2 tracks and really has 1 track. Public school has 1 track where you go to college, and it's almost like college, if you at least go to a decent college and get a good degree, is almost like when your actual preparation for being an adult starts. But if you don't go to college, you just enter the workforce. Unless you have really good parents who were like proactive with you, you enter unprepared. You have no idea how to like manage money and like write checks and understanding credit and interest rates and how to like take care of yourself, right? How to
like the public school system doesn't do that for you.
Right. So that's why I say it's 2 tracks, but actually it's like 1 track. Like I remember when I chose not to go to college, my guidance counselors and all my teachers almost like, after they stopped trying to bully me to change my mind, they basically were just like done with me. They were just like, well, whatever.
Good luck with life.
It's almost like, good luck with life, because we left you totally unprepared for it. Right?
Yeah, it's unreal.
Like on one hand, if you don't send your kids to public school, it's like there's this like stigma around it, like they won't be prepared for life. But then it's almost, if we prepared you for life, why is there such a push for college anyway? Like you should be able to be, like you would think your counselors and teachers would be at least, well, you know what? Maybe you would have a better earning potential if you went to college, but we're still very confident that you're going to go out and thrive because of the education we gave you. Yeah. But almost telling on themselves a little bit when they
funny.
So
sorry, go
ahead.
No, you finish your thought.
Well, I think there's so many implications to this, and that we were talking beforehand how I simultaneously don't want to judge other Christians who choose not to homeschool, but I kind of like, not like judge them in like you're a bad Christian or a bad parent, but just to like, I want to have conversations with them, conversations like this, where I just like get people to think about like, what are the schools doing? Like, I mean, just think about, do the math. How many hours are you spending with your child versus the school? And think about all the parallels between the school and a prison versus the school and like the kind of like real life practical education. Like you brought up cooking. My oldest, he's had days where we don't make him do this, where he actually has made breakfast, lunch, and dinner for everyone else in our house because he wants to. He doesn't like doing dishes. So that's the opportunity.
There it is.
Doing something uncomfortable. It's like,
yes, exactly.
If you're going to make the food,
yes, exactly.
That's fine, but you're going to help do the dishes, right?
Yes, we are on the same track. Yes. Yes, it's the implications of like, okay, so you love this, but there's going to be hard stuff that comes along with doing the stuff that you love. And that is exactly where I think that kids can learn, like, okay, you got to do hard things. Okay. How about we let them do the hard things that naturally will come along with doing anything that you love? Because it doesn't matter what it is, there's always going to be hard stuff that comes along with it. I started teaching dance to homeschoolers. I taught dance to homeschoolers from age 14 to 19, and I loved it. I had to do a lot of hard stuff with that because we would do recitals. And so it was like, okay, there's a lot of figuring out, like, what venue are we going to rent? Can we negotiate with them on the price? How much do I need to price tickets to be able to sell, to make up the money for this venue and actually make a profit? Okay, what costumes are we going to do? How do we make the costumes affordable for the parents, but I can still hopefully actually make some kind of, all of those things that were hard, but they were in alignment with my giftings. And that's really what I think the biggest advantage that you can give your kids with homeschooling is. I always liken it to like, people will say, how are you going to teach your kids everything? How do you know all of I have enough knowledge to teach them everything? And I'm thinking, I don't have enough knowledge. I consider myself the ultimate guidance counselor. Like, I love my children. I'm so deeply invested in my babies, and I have a close front row seat to seeing what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And then my job, I think, as a parent is to, once again, pray for that discernment and then hopefully guide them, give them resources that can help build up their skills and fill in the weak areas and Yeah, I mean, more than me, you got 5 kids, but I'm just blabbering my thoughts around this and what I think. And also to piggyback off of what you said, and this is what I meant to say in the beginning, and maybe this is what makes me a libertarian. I don't know, but I always joke that I'm a little embarrassed that I'm kind of a little bit, I'm not really a relativist, but I kind of maybe am in the sense that like, I have these big opinions about homeschooling. I feel like you have to have seen this. Have you seen Vodi Bakum's sermon, Children of Caesar?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I watched that. I'm like, yes, I'm right there. And then simultaneously, I'm kind of like, but hey, you do you, different families, different life, different strength, different towns. Like it's kind of like that feeling, like you said, of not judging, and you do what's right for your family. But simultaneously, I feel like a radical, passionate homeschooler that thinks it's honestly like the best way to go.
Yeah. Like I think it's the ideal. I can recognize that for some people in where they find themselves, it might not be possible, or like it would be possible only with great sacrifice. And I can recognize that every situation's a bit different, and like I'm not going to judge them, but I wish there was more conversation within the church to at least start trending towards the idea of like, you know what, like maybe this is the ideal we should be trying to get to. And like because then there'd be more support. I think part of the issue is like, and this is starting to happen as you get more, especially after COVID, more Christians joining homeschool movements, is that like, once there's enough there, it becomes easier because it's like, oh, actually, I don't have to do this all by myself.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a community of people, of other families who are doing it, and we're going to do it together. And so you're getting socialization, and you're not like having to just literally make everything from scratch. And I love that whole, like, if your kids are raised by Caesar, why are you surprised when they come out Roman? I mean,
yes, exactly.
The whole thing about like, how much time are you spending with your kids versus how much is the schools, which I think is kind of, because they're public, they're an extension of the state.
Exactly.
So
would you close this door for me? Sorry, I just left the store open. I'm having to close it. Go on, and then they grow up.
Well, it's like, we wonder, and listen, there are some people who might be raised in the best of circumstances and still fall away from their faith. But we're setting children up for failure in a lot of the ways that we're doing this. I feel like and this is a bit of my, I guess, libertarian insight here, but like, there's this sort of like modern propaganda that like, there was no such thing as educating children or birthing children before everything was like social, like centrally planned and socialized by the it's like and you have to be like, if you're not dependent on the system, there's something weird or wrong about it.
And then I always joke, like, dude, if you just pick up a book from like a couple hundred years ago, it's clear that they were educated. Like, in a lot of ways, it seems like we've maybe backslid a bit.
I was gonna say, like, maybe they were more educated a couple.
Yes, exactly.
Like, if you read the writings of like the founding fathers or Thomas Paine, and like some of them were educated, but some of them were just like farmers and laymen, and like they didn't. And even if they were educated, it wasn't like they had a K through 12 like public school education. They had schools, but they were much smaller and they didn't last as long. And people they learned through reading and writing and conversation. I mean, like the whole American Revolution was basically a bunch of like farmers and workers reading pamphlets and sending letters back and forth to each other, to the point where they were inspired by their belief in liberty and their faith in God, at least for some of them, to be like, no, we're going to govern ourselves. And I'm like, you're telling me this was like this like illiterate, uneducated group of people that did this? Like,
I feel like the modern day idea of education, it seems like they've hijacked the word education to mean like education TM. Like it means going through this specific versus just like being an educated, like a person who's constantly learning, reading, absorbing, engaging in conversations and discourse. And it's so bizarre to me. And it's weird too, when I think that there's this assumption, and I think it's because of the way that our school system is set up, where they can project onto children that children don't want to learn. I don't know what your experience has been like, and I'm really only one kid in because my baby's still a baby. But my son is like hungry to learn. I feel like we all joke about this, like the questions never stop. Questions.
They never stop.
Never stop.
Sometimes I'm like joking. I'm like, you have to pay me $10 to ask one more question today. I cannot continue.
And he's not even 6 yet. And sometimes the questions he asks me stretch me philosophically or like even just facts that I don't know. And it's like, okay, let's go look into this together. And I think that what the school system has the potential of doing is squashing that in kids, sucking that curiosity out of them because they know they're not going to get to actually explore their curiosity. Or like John Taylor Gatto talks about the bell being like, it's like you're interested in learning and then boom, you're done. Boom, you're done. Boom, and it's so like jarring. I don't know how much you like his work. I love his work.
Yeah. I mean, learning is not this like linear thing. A lot of times learning is like these peaks and valleys, right? Where like, and that can be both in your knowledge accumulation and understanding and even your interest. Like there's sometimes like we kind of do a more, I won't say it's fully unschooling, but it has a lot of elements of that where like so like now we give the state, like our school district, like the curriculum, which we cover, but we cover not in like this, all right, at 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. they are studying.
Yes, exactly.
9 a.m. to, like it comes up organically throughout just the normal course of everyday family life. And now like there'll be some things where like they struggle and they don't have an interest for it for like months. And then all of a sudden there'll be like a 2-week period where they're like, this is all they want to learn and they get into it deep and they figure it out.
Yes.
And like, that's such a beautiful thing. And then the other thing you said, which I wanted to comment on, was that like the collaboration of like being stretched by their questions and learning.
Yes.
And I love having those moments where they ask me a question. Now it can be something just about science or math or English. And I go, I don't know that. Let's find out together and learn it together. That's a cool opportunity. And then also to even just like beyond that, to have moments where they ask like deep questions about God or faith, religion or whatnot. And like, you know, those are really cool moments too, to say like, well, ask them follow-up questions and have really good conversations with them that just build that relationship and bond. And like, I guess I can't see to the future, but I know some parents worry about like, and I see kids at the church I'm going to, like where parents, like they've had kids who have like, when they become adults, they don't like denounce their parents, but like they walk away from the faith and there's like that separation. I can't say I have like, I don't know if they're going to maintain their perseverance in the faith. Only God knows that, but I'm at least confident that they're going to want to have a relationship with me. Like I don't think they're going to grow up and suddenly be like, I hate you, Dad. I hate you, Mom.
Yeah. It would be out of left field.
Yeah. It would be very surprising, I think. So I think that's one of the advantages to the homeschooling thing too. And as I mentioned before, what I think homeschooling obviously existed beforehand, but COVID definitely, I think, ignited a huge surge of interest in this topic. And I know that was one of the things that you got a little bit of slack for as well. And that might have due down more of a libertarian path. But like, I tried to go back and research some of the things you said during COVID, and they weren't even like, as far as I could tell, like you weren't like the being super provocative. You were just kind of like asking maybe common sense questions. Like, I don't know, like, are these masks really necessary? And have we considered like the social costs to like children being raised, not being able to see people's faces in public? Maybe this is a nuanced conversation we need to be having, not just a government said it, so it must be true. As if the government is always right or something.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's interesting because my husband very early on, we're talking like 48 hours in or something like that, to them recommending everyone be masked. I remember we're like sitting in our living room in Nashville, and looks at me and goes, dude, what about deaf people? And I was like, oh my gosh, like it occurred to him instantly. He was just like, what are they supposed to do if they can't see your face? They can't read your lips. I'm like, wow. And I've seen, that's kind of jumping ahead, but I've seen some people talk about that now a few years down the road. It really was, it needed to be a more nuanced conversation than it was. And to your point, I really didn't say anything that radical. That's actually something, it's kind of funny to me looking back. Sometimes people will say that to me, like, oh, your stance is during COVID. Or like, thank you. I'm like, I don't even really know what I did. I think I showed up on Instagram story once in an airport without a mask. People like lost their minds. But I obviously said enough. I do know one thing that got me in trouble, and I really didn't feel like it was radical, but it did get me in trouble, was talking about vitamin C. Because my sister and I, we had a sickness in high school that was like undiagnosable. They couldn't figure it out. And basically it was cured through high dose vitamin C therapy over the course of 6 months, tapering down, because the theory, and it played out this way in us, is that the healthier you are, the less vitamin C your body can handle. If you can handle it, you can handle a ton if you're really sick, basically is the point. And then as you get healthier, you can't handle as much. It's called like taking vitamin C to like bowel titration. I think that's the way to put it. But you notice when your stomach starts acting up, and yeah, the sicker you are, the more you can handle. So I had made a mention like, hey, this is worthwhile for anyone that might be fighting sickness, whatever. And that video got dinged. I don't remember if it got taken down or demonetized or it got a strike on my channel. Something happened. And I was like, whoa. And then like 24 hours later, Susan Wojcinski, however you say her last name, who actually passed away about a year or two ago from cancer. She was the CEO of YouTube at the time. She went on like CNN or something talking about conspiracy theories around vitamin C helping with COVID. And I was like, whoa, okay, I am enough of a conspiracy theorist to think that if you're calling this out on here, then we are right. To make light of it. Because but vitamin C is actually something that we utilize regularly when illness strikes.
All the nutrients. I don't want to get too into the weeds with this story. I've never actually, I might have to do like a full podcast on my show to give this story more fully, but my dad almost died from COVID. And it was because they would not listen to any of the recommendations I'd been given by people I trust for and the recommendations weren't even that extreme or out there. But so he almost died. And the only things I told him to do, I was like, listen, everything I'm being told is that, because he was on like an incubator. And I was like, I've been told that the best way to survive when you get this stage for oxygen saturation is you have to put them in the prone position, meaning on their stomach, which is a little awkward to do when you got an incubator in, but that the oxygen gets absorbed through the body better. And they told me they were doing that twice a day. Then they stopped for a week and he was literally like almost dead because they were giving him 100% oxygen and his O2 stats kept dropping. And then I asked, well, even when, does it rise at all when they prone him? And they were like, but keep in mind, this was like the height of the pandemic. I couldn't go into the hospital. I couldn't visit him and check on him. I had to rely on phone call conversations. And they were like, we haven't proned him in 4 days. I was like, are you, I think I used some expletives. I was like, are you kidding me?
Was the theory behind that because the lungs need to work? Because that's what I've heard, that you had to work the lungs.
Yeah, something about that. And also the blood flow of the position.
Oh, interesting.
Versus something like that. And then the other thing, I think vitamin C and then also vitamin D, which was a huge thing. And what I kept telling them was he was vitamin D deficient before he had COVID. His family doctor had prescribed him high dosage prescription grade vitamin D for his deficiency. And they were refusing to give it to him because because they're just you can't cure COVID with vitamin D. I was like, no, of course not. But you know what? It's going to, what I was like, listen, I'm not a doctor, but I understand how medicine works. Medicine works with the immune system. Guess what your immune system needs to work? Nutrients, vitamins. You can't, a starving person or a nutritionally deficient person's immune system isn't going to fight off illness as well.
Yes, yeah.
As soon as they started listening to me on that stuff, he rebounded and they were like, it's a miracle. Amazing. And I'm like, the miracle is that it didn't kill him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, God, that's so depressing. That's so sad.
Oh, it's just crazy. But it's just this sort of I knew I was a libertarian before COVID, but it really made me awake to the idea that there are some people who just they get what they believe is truth comes from what media personnel and politicians tell them. Right. And it's not even good enough because you brought up when you were talking, I've listened to your stuff on vaccines as well. And you can quote doctors and scientists, but if they're not the government approved doctors and scientists, then their opinions don't matter. Only the ones who get the government approval. And it's anyway, there's a lot there. I don't know if there's anything you want to respond to on any of that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if it's not part of the scientific consensus, then that doctor's opinion doesn't matter. Even though I was just talking about this today because I am working to promote the North Idaho Film Festival, and they're showing a movie called Follow the Silenced, and it's all about people who were injured by the COVID vax. And one of the things that I talked about in this was the fact that, and I don't remember the website, so I'm sorry, but I'm sure you can do some simple Googling. It's easy to find. There's a website that tells you all of these medications that the FDA had approved over the years. Oh, Logan, I need you to step out. Hi, honey. Hello. You gotta go though, baby. Go out and close the door. Go back with Daddy, Tay. Can you close the door behind you? Thank you. There's a website that it lists to you all of the medications that the FDA has approved over I don't even remember. I think some of them went back very far to the early 1900s. And they tell you how long they were approved before they were taken off the market. And some of these medications, we're talking 30, 40 years. And so it's well, the scientific consensus was that everything was fine for 3 decades. And there's such a long history of that. It's really bizarre to me how much people claim to scientific consensus. It's really strange, but there's that. Yes, I am an aggressive anti-vaxxer. This is apparently really known about me. I just figured out a couple years ago, and that's kind of when I decided to embrace it because I didn't think I was openly, aggressively anti-vax. And then I Googled my name one day and it lists me as an anti-vaxxer. I was wait, what? So ever since then, I was well, I might as well just full on go out. So yeah, I mean, I'm someone who thinks that a lot of these childhood diseases were curbed by other variables, specifically clean water, the development and how we were able to take care of our trash and our poop and our pee, in the cities, food, access to fresh food, lots of different things. And there's books written about this, extensive books, but I think that the vaccines actually have come along with a lot of unintended consequences. So that's part of the reason I'm also anti-vax. And then also people, I don't understand this. People get mad at me when I talk about the vaccines being built on aborted fetal cells. But from everything that I can find, this is common. You don't have to, you can go on hospital websites and they have documentaries about this to try to make you feel better if you're someone who's got a problem with that. But they admit this. So yeah, I don't know. I could keep going unfortunately in different directions. But
I mean, everything you said is just from my perspective. And I want to be clear here. I don't speak for the entirety of the Libertarian Christian Institute with my personal views on vaccines, but I'm pretty much right there with you. I got radicalized on vaccines before COVID though, because I was just so my wife was always more anti-vax. And I was well, listen, I get the arguments that they give them too many and there's things in there that might be harmful to them, but I still felt vaccines, were part of an important part of the equation for health and that some of them were important. And so we wanted to do a modified schedule where it was slightly delayed and we opted out of certain ones that seemed unnecessary. And long story short, the pediatricians fought us so hard on that.
I was going to say that's a dangerous path, modified schedule. Yeah. They go ding, 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 ding.
And then they gave my oldest at the time when he was still young, because this is when we were going through this, gave him a Hep B vaccine against our permission, literally written down on paper that we were opting out of this, gave it to him anyway, and then told basically, I'll have an anecdote to share after this. This is reminding me of this pattern I've noticed throughout my life, but he literally told me, well, I give it to my children. So why wouldn't we want to give it to yours? Or do you not trust me or something like that?
Oh,
I was but that's your children.
Yeah.
These are my children. This is the division of how we do things in society. Is you raise your kids, I raise my kids. It's so what, I read the Bible to my kids. Can I just come into your house and start reading the Bible to them?
Yeah,
that's the way we're going to do things now.
Yeah.
So it's just absolutely crazy. And listen, I'm sure early on, the first vaccines might have helped some. I'm not even saying when I say anti-vax, and maybe if you don't agree with this, that's fine. I'm just saying what it means for me. Yeah. I'm not saying that vaccines don't provide some immunity. I'm saying that I think the trade-offs of the current vaccine what's the word I'm looking for here? The current vaccine agenda that sort of pushed on people are just it's a net bad, and that everything you said about how I think vaccines played a almost negligible role compared to all the other factors that we've listed that kind of...
There was too many other developments going on at the same time to pin all of the success on the back of vaccines, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. And it's now, people will always come up with reductio ad absurdum claims. It's what if there was a vaccine that was 100% effective for a virus that was 100% deadly? Would you I don't know. That's just a random hypothetical.
Yeah. See, for me, oh, sorry, go on.
Well, I just say for me, I'm not what I want to do is actually follow the science.
Yeah, right.
For me, the science is like being skeptical and like looking at evidence and not just like trusting the science doesn't just mean trusting authority blindly.
That's exactly it. And see, for me, if they said, okay, there's a vaccine that's 100% effective for everyone all the time, I still wouldn't want it because I could almost guarantee it's built on the back of aborted fetal cells or animal cells, which it's almost, I'm kind of sifting through which one is which, but from what I'm finding, they're all aborted fetal cells. And to me, my mom and I were talking about this. If the technology is built on something that I deem to be evil, then I don't think that the outcome is good. And we can't really be surprised with these potentially unintended consequences.
Yeah. So that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And I just think, sorry, go on.
No, I don't. You finish your thought.
I was just going to say that I do believe in the wild exposure to things. I think that in wild exposure, like our joke is as my kids are playing in dirt or like grabbing other kids' sippy cups or whatever, I'm like vaccinated, like not really. And I realize I sound really dumb when I say that, but also you get my gist. Like I think exposure to things naturally is the best and most effective way to build immunity. Would the child potentially have to get sick and fight it? Yes. But I think that the fight, just like, I don't know, working out and building muscle, like I think the fight is what makes them stronger. And because of the day and age that we live in, where we do have access to, if there really is an emergency, whether you need to lower a fever, though I'm typically pro fever, depending on the situation, but there's so much that you can do to support a child while they're fighting an illness. I think that that's just part of their growth and setting them up for potential protection in their health in the long run. Like there have been studies of people debating whether things like the measles actually helps to protect a child against certain types of cancer as an adult. It's like, we just don't know.
We don't know. I mean, there have not been that many long-term studies about the effectiveness of a lot of the newer vaccines, let alone the COVID vaccine, which is, I kind of don't want to call the COVID vaccine a vaccine.
A vaccine, exactly. Exactly.
Because it's like, I'm anti-vax, but even if I wasn't anti-vax, I'd be anti these mRNA experiments that are just like creepy. Like forget about like being built on fetal cells, that like you're hijacking my cells RNA to create things and I'm like
so wild.
Yeah, like okay, I'm sure that has nothing like
no ramifications.
Yeah. Anyway, we could go on like such a rabbit hole on this, but I do want to shift.
Wait, can I tie a bow on that really quick?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I feel like I need to shout this from the rooftop every time this subject comes up. If you're a Christian and you're looking for a resource on like a perspective of the healthcare industry, the mainstream medical establishment, there's a book called Faith and Wellness by R.J. Rushdoony. He was like he's like a reformed apologetics, whatever. But that book, I've read it like maybe 2 or 3 times. It's been a while, but I remember every time I've read it, I've been like, whoa, I have not read any other book like that at this point, where he gives a Christian analysis of the healthcare system. And I remember it's pretty radical, but for me, it was spot on and it really resonated with me.
Yeah. No, Rushdoony was a radical for sure. And sometimes ways I disagreed with, but in that arena, he was definitely spot on.
Yeah. I'm not like well read in Rushdoony. Like I think I've maybe read 1 or 2 of his other books, but like that book was really resonated with me.
Yeah. So, you've said it a couple of times here how like you've in our back and forth chats that like you kind of like view yourself almost as like a right-wing extremist now. You weren't you thought you were conservative, now you're more conservative, and you like this, like there's like the word libertarian has some appeal to you and some about it, and you've at least adopted a couple of our mantras, but you're not like completely sure what it means. I want to dive into that here to kind of be this last little bit of time we have. But so before I talk about what I think libertarianism is, I want you to the best of your ability, like I don't need like a textbook definition, but just like, what do you know or what do you associate with the word libertarian? And when you use it, how do you understand or feel about that term in your own words?
I feel like I have the weight of the Tuttle twins staring at me now. I work with them and I'm like going to be like, did you get the message? Like, do you understand?
My kids have read all the Tuttle Twins. The kids of mine who read have read all the Tuttle Twins.
I mean, I love them. I just think that their stuff is fantastic. Yeah, to me, I think a lot of it's the free market, the actual free market versus like what I consider. And I hear other people use this now. I'm like, yeah, like crony capitalism, where like these mega corporations all around the world influence policies in a way that like stomps out the actual competition. So I see it as like the free market. I see it as generally kind of anti-war. I don't even fully know. I feel like part of what's drawn me to libertarianism is because a lot of times I'll see people who identify as libertarian talking about things where I'm like, oh yeah, that. I mean, I joked about being kind of a relativist, and this is why I kind of hem and haw between the two, because in my private heart, I feel like most of the stances I align with are very right-wing, kind of hardcore Christian stances. But when it comes to enacting them in the world, I don't feel, and maybe it's because I'm a woman, maybe it's because it just generally is like a biblical trait of, I mean, you're not a woman and you align with this idea of like, I don't want to force people to live a certain way. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I got out of Los Angeles for a reason, because I wanted to be around more like-minded people. And I don't necessarily think like, oh, no morals should be legislated, because where is that line? You know, I'm not quite sure. I don't know.
Like murder is immoral, and we want to
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but the people's definition of murder varies, right? Like in the pro-life, it's like, no, it's a zygote, or whatever the phrasing is. So that's where I think I'll end it. I feel like I'm excited to hear what you have to say, and I feel like you're chomping at the bit to tell me.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of that's good. I think that, so like, if I'm going to answer it in two ways. I think libertarianism, like trademark, right? The term, the political philosophy, is actually really simple. It's just the belief in private property rights and what's called the non-aggression principle, which just means that like it is unlawful or immoral to initiate aggression against a peaceful person. So like if someone is not committing aggression, for you to come in and to coerce them or use aggression against them is immoral. So which means it's not pacifism, which means if someone is committing aggression, there is a role for like the limited use of force to restrain and bring restitution and justice. Yeah. Now, obviously, that can get into like, what are you grounding that in? Because as you said, not everyone defines aggression or murder the same way. So I think libertarianism is like a thin political philosophy, but it does need to be nested into a cultural backdrop, which is why I'm a Christian who thinks libertarianism has a lot of value. What we do at LCI, Libertarian Christian Institute, when we talk about Christian political thought, is not about like picking a political philosophy or political party and making that our identity or trying to like force our political beliefs into the Bible. We start actually differently than libertarianism. We start with the simple mantra that Christ is king, not Caesar. That was almost like the earliest gospel message that was carried out to the people, was that Christ is Lord. And so our allegiance is to him alone. And now that doesn't mean that we don't believe in law and order and justice. Government has a role, but it's limited. And I think biblically the state or government exists to uphold justice, to protect people from theft, from fraud, from violence. But the important thing here is to make sure that it's not sovereign in society, that it doesn't, our salvation and righteousness don't come from government or the state, and that government, when it grows outside that narrow God-ordained boundary of enforcing justice, it becomes idolatrous. It becomes this like rival kingdom with like a rival religion that like it makes people pledge allegiance to, and kind of like the civic religious doctrines of the day. And then when it goes beyond those God-given bounds, it also distorts its fundamental purposes of justice and upholding the biblical idea of justice, and undermining the idea that our allegiance is in Christ alone. I think a really good passage to demonstrate this is 1 Samuel 8. This is where Israel rejects God's rule and demands a king. Like, and they say, like, they go to Samuel and they say, your kids are not good judges, because before the institution of the monarchy, Israel was ruled by local judges that would rise up. And Samuel was like the last righteous judge. And they go to Samuel and say, your kids are not following in your ways. They're corrupt. They take bribes. So give us a king who will rule us like all the other nations. And then Samuel goes to God, and God's angry about it and tell Samuel to tell them that like your rejection, you're asking for a human king is a rejection of me as your king. God tells Samuel to tell the Israelites and gives them all these warnings, which should resonate for us today, that if we decide to put a human king, a human rulers above us, that this king will take their sons for war, their daughters for labor, will take their property and their wealth and their freedom. It literally ends with saying, and you will be his slaves. And in that day, you will cry out because of this king you've chosen, but I will not answer you. And of course, the Israelites, because they constantly rejected God in so many ways, were like, nope, that we're not going to heed that warning. Give us a king. And I think that pattern plays out in modern life. And this is why liberty matters, why libertarianism matters for Christians. It's not because liberty is the highest good, but because people made in God's image must be free to follow him by conscience, not to be coerced to do so. And that idea that the gospel has implications for all of our life, for how we raise, like everything we've just talked about, how we raise and educate our children, how we steward resources, talking about economics and private property rights and free markets, what we put into our bodies and how we vote, and going back to like, who do we put in authority? And so to confess Christ as king is to basically deny that ultimate authority to the state and to put us at odds with any government that would try to play God. And so I think that's a good illustration. I'll end on this. There's this expression which we have on our bookmarks here, which comes from our founder, Dr. Norman Horn, which I think kind of says everything I said in a very simple statement. Libertarianism is the most consistent expression of Christian political thought.
I've heard you say that.
Yeah, so it doesn't mean that like we're telling Christians who aren't libertarians, you're a bad Christian, or the Bible commands you to be a libertarian. It's not what we're saying. We're saying that if we're evaluating kind of like philosophy and human reason and political arrangements and philosophy, libertarianism is the most compatible with what's taught in scripture regarding law and justice and order and economics. And you brought up being like anti-war and like, what is, there's a rich history in Christian and church history of theologians developing a just war theory. And I think that is sort of like Christians over time developing a political theory, which is compatible with what libertarians believe. But yeah, that's kind of there's obviously a lot more, right? And we have actually this book that we have published and we're working on a second edition, but it's called Faith Seeking Freedom. And it kind of like takes these principles and then goes like, it's a question and answer format. So it kind of goes like topic by topic, but that's the cool foundation of what I think, not just libertarianism is, but like Christian libertarianism. And I think it mattered because like, I know I've kind of rambled here for a lot, but I like the way you put it, which is that I'm very conservative and very right wing when it comes to what I believe about marriage, what I believe about morality, what I believe about human sexuality, what I believe about family life, and so many things. But I'm a libertarian because it's like, you know what? If you're not committing aggression, it's not the government's job to make you make the right decisions for yourself or your family. That's where I draw that line. It's about like distinguishing between criminality and just general sinfulness, because like something can be a sin without it being a crime. And I think that's a distinction that if I had a criticism for like the right-wing Christianity is that they sometimes don't have a working theory of like distinguishing between what is sinfulness and what is criminality. Because they overlap, but they're not, but like you need to have a way to define when should government use force to intervene in people's lives.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. And this is something that I've been grappling with a lot because I feel like I've heard a lot of people say that like libertarianism is like the weaker position. Or, oh, it sounds great, but how does that really operate in society? But then whenever I hear libertarians speak, I'm like, oh yeah, I really resonate with that. And so it is something that like I'm exploring, I'm going down the path because yeah, it makes everything you said makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely good faith questions for any political philosophy to be like how does this work in the real world? And I think that those are always conversations about evaluating like where are we at, what's the ideal now, like how do we start moving in that direction? Like the truth is no right-wing conservative Christian, like Republican or whatever, no matter what they believe in, or Christian nationalists have ever perfectly implemented their ideas, and made them work.
Totally.
Like it's always a struggle. And I would say, but part of that struggle, I'll invoke an analogy here, which maybe you're familiar with, is that people often liken this struggle to like Lord of the Rings and the struggle over the one true ring, because everyone thinks like, well, freedom sounds hard. Like, how would that work? Wouldn't it just be easier if we could just use the government to just like make society organize the way we want it to? But for one, it just doesn't work. Like the left and the right both fail in trying to like organize society and like make it conform. I think just even biblical history, like shouldn't we learn from Israel's example where like they had a law given to them by God and governments and rulers given to them by God that was like, here's the law, obey it. And he just always disobeyed it and fell into idolatry anyway. So I think there's, not to get too technical, I think the heart of what like your question, like you probably would have many questions about like how libertarianism would work. And I think it's kind of like our job as Christians is not necessarily to say we're going to be able to give you succinct answers to how every societal problem is answered.
Yeah.
But if we just kind of study world history and biblical history, listen, before the monarchy in Israel, they had a civil war. They had all sorts of problems with sin. It's just kind of like, hey, once they had the king, none of that went away.
Yeah.
It got worse even. So it's kind of like, I call this the nirvana fallacy. This sort of idea that like, well, isn't the goal to try to like make things perfect or make things like, as good? Like, I don't think we can do that.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
think our call as Christians is to like make a, like, or if it's to make a righteous society, it's because it's filled with righteous people.
Yeah, exactly.
Make righteous people.
Yes.
We don't make righteous people with government. Only the Holy Spirit.
Yes, exactly.
Only education. I want to say one more thing and then let you ask any questions or say anything you want. Charlie Kirk wasn't really a libertarian, but he was kind of libertarian leaning on some things. And he had this thing he would say, which I loved. And it grieves me to see people kind of like using his death to almost call for the opposite. He said, we have two options as a society, as people. We have conversation and persuasion or violence. Like that's it. Those are our only two choices. Yeah. So like, how do we want to lead as Christians? How do we want to be as ambassadors for Christ? I'm not saying we should be soft on sin. I'm saying that the way to combat sin is sometimes not with the weapons of the world. Sometimes it is through like, it's through preaching, it's through the gospel, it's through the Holy Spirit, it's through serving the least of these, it's through our activism, it's through our example, it's through showing that our way is better. And if we start saying that like the way we're going to bring Christ to the nations is through the sword, I kind of feel like we're kind of mixing that message up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have 52 directions I could go off of that. It's a very conflicting thing to me. And I clearly don't know enough about a lot of these ideologies. So like, if I were to just, what I vaguely know, I look at the lay of the land and I'm like, I feel like I fall somewhere between libertarianism and Christian nationalism, but I don't even really understand the depth of what both of them are. Like even you talking, I'm like, oh, I could just like keep listening to this. I did an interview with someone who I think is kind of a self-proclaimed Christian nationalist. And I kind of said the same thing to him. I'm like, I don't even really know what that means. And I do feel like everything you said, I'm like, yes, totally. It's not, but maybe it's like, and I don't know. I feel this feeling of like, okay, well, I'm a Christian in my day-to-day life that's going to come out in different ways. And I do feel like Christians are called to live their life and then make their decisions as Christians. So wherever that is in the public square through your vote, but I don't know what that looks like with legislation, but I just feel like we're meant to live like Christians in the public square, not necessarily be like, oh, well, what is it? I don't know how to quite word that. And so I don't know what that looks like.
Right. No, that's a very good question. And what you're getting at is called the myth of religious neutrality. Regarding like the public square, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually, so obviously like Christian libertarianism would contrast with Christian nationalists in a lot of ways, but there are
Isn't that funny?
overlap. But there's overlap because I actually think now, like, your mileage will vary. There's some Christian nationalists who, even though I disagree with, I really like them, and then there's some who I don't like. But I often think that they get the diagnosis right when it comes to culture and when it comes to some big picture themes. And this is one of them, that I think it's true that there is no such thing as like neutrality in the public square. Everyone is going to like come with their own, like everyone, even people who claim they're not religious, have something that is their religion. It is their system of values that is acting like an interpretive framework for how they make value judgments in society. Yeah. This is it's completely inevitable. There's no way around this.
Yeah.
The only thing I would push back against like the Christian nationalists would be is that I don't think that it follows that just because there's no such thing as religious neutrality, that means that so I think it would be good if our nation was led by Christians. I'm not even against the idea in a very general sense of Christian nationalism, insofar as like, if you asked me, would I rather live in a nation run by Christians or run by and led by Christian values or by secular people and secular values? I don't think any Christian is going to say, give me the secular people and the secular values, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's just kind of a conversation of, okay, but then we need to figure out what those Christian values look like. And is it a Christian value to compel your neighbor with violence to not sin? I think it's like, well, that's where if it's me compelling him to not murder or not beat his children, I would use force to compel parents to not beat their children or for people to not go and murder and steal and commit sexual assault and anything like that. But like, I wouldn't use violence to compel, like, if someone's smoking marijuana.
I was just going to say like drug use. Yeah.
Like if someone's smoking, now I don't smoke marijuana. I don't think people should smoke marijuana generally. Maybe there's medicinal purposes for cannabis and marijuana, but like, I don't think it's Christian to like get high or anything like that. I don't think it's right. I don't know how I can be a Christian and be like, you're smoking a plant and getting high, and now I'm going to use violence on you and point a gun at you and lock you.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. It's like the opposite of when people are like, oh, all sin is sin. All sin is sin. It's like, yeah, but like, is really smoking marijuana the same thing as sexually assaulting a child? It's not the same thing.
Yeah. There's this weird myth. I don't really know where it comes from in the evangelical mythos or ethos that says like all sin is equal. And I'm like, well, all sin is equal in the sense that like all have fallen short of the glory of God.
Yes, exactly.
All of us need a savior. And like, you can't obtain righteousness or obtain salvation by saying, but listen, I never murdered or stole or raped. So therefore I'm good and deserve. No, like all sin is equally it's equal in the sense that like we're all separated by God. We're all equally deserve. Like we don't deserve heaven. We deserve the reason grace is grace. And I am Reformed, by the way, so I take this to the fullest extent. Grace is grace because it's freely given. It's not earned. That's what makes the gospel message so beautiful, is that like we didn't earn our salvation. We were rightfully, after the fall, we were deserving of death, and God sent his only son to die in our place so that we might have life. So lost my train of thought there. So sin
not being sin is not all the same.
Yeah, but so just because sin is all the same in that aspect doesn't mean that all sin is equally sinful or equally.
Yes, exactly.
There is a hierarchy of different sins. Like lying on your math test is not the same as like committing genocide.
Yes.
And there's something weird about that. And so like I think that it gets into categorizing sins by many different categories actually, but one has to be like, if you're going to be like, I could even like do an internal critique of Christian nationalism and say, if you're going to say government should govern based on Christian norms, I agree with you, but don't we need to define the Christian norms and have an objective standard as to what is criminality and what isn't?
Yeah, that all totally makes sense.
And I think the Christian nationalists all have different answers that I disagree with to varying degrees, because they sometimes they'll say, like, you have theonomists who say, well, we should use the Mosaic law. And I'm like, I have reasons for rejecting that, but also judge a tree by its fruit. What was the fruit of that? Like, the law wasn't good, but it didn't create the society that you claim to want to create. So I think we can learn from that.
This might be why I have a hard time understanding what Christian nationalism even really is, because maybe people
are kind of different things,
pushing different things. Yeah. Which is kind of what the guy that I was talking to said. He kind of was like, well, there's not really one agreed upon.
Yeah, no, there isn't. Like, there are some Christian nationalists who are like a couple degrees of separation away from like what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There are some who are like, so some of us are in the same book, but different chapters.
Yeah.
And then some of us are like, I don't even know what book you're reading.
Yeah, totally. That's fascinating. Yeah. Well, my political exploration continues, and this has just been fascinating. I feel like I'm just kind of like internally chuckling at the fact that we could keep going for like hours. Clearly, we both really like to talk, and it's just fascinating. I've really appreciated hearing your perspective on all of that.
For sure.
I've enjoyed watching your interviews. Continue.
Absolutely. I'm glad we were able to dive into a little bit of this, and I'll be like, and obviously I hope you come to learn more about libertarianism, but like, I do want to just end on a note of saying that, like, I think politics matters, and I think you would agree politics matters. Yeah. But I always want to end with saying that, like, I don't think political differences undermine anyone's faith. Like, I mean, maybe with like weird, like I would probably, if someone was like Hitler and claimed to be a Christian, I might question that. But I think in a general sense, you know what I mean? Like, I think we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. And I think conversations like this are important. And I think you and I have at least learned in this conversation that we're in the same book.
Yeah.
And I use that metaphor.
Yes. And if there's ever another chance for us to talk again, I would love it, because this has been a blast, and just fascinating. I will keep watching your interviews because I'm learning a lot from you.
Thank you for that. I want people to also check your content out. So for my audience and those who are unfamiliar with you, just tell people before we sign off here where they can follow you and learn more about what you do. Yeah,
you can just search my name, Nikki Phillippi, on a lot of platforms. I don't know. I'm kind of everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, kind of all over. It's easy to find me. And my content is in flux, right? I do lifestyle, social, political commentary. Honestly, I think in my bio right now, I have like living, creating, and sharing. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Living my life as a mom. I create and I share what I feel like God's leading me to share. And if any of you come on over, welcome. And I appreciate it. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Nikki, for this conversation. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And as I always conclude by saying, live at peace and live for Christ.